My name is Walter Mahone. I work here at the AG's office. And unfortunately, you're going to have to sit here and watch me pace across this stage today. So I've been at the AG's office since 2019, and I've been fortunate to work all across all of our divisions at the AG's office. But this has been one of the most important things that I've been able to do. So we talk about sextortion, we talk about social media, and what we're seeing with our kids, with our students, and adults. So we're going to go through some of that, and we're going to look at some stats. We're going to look at really who's out to get you and what they're doing. So first, I always like to put this out there. This sextortion is not the best topic. People want to hear about it, but it's a hard topic to talk about. And unfortunately, at the end of this, hopefully you realize it's happening, it's here, it's everywhere. So I like to put up a slide of the beautiful town I used to work in. This is where I started in Colorado as a patrol officer, and then I made detective, and so I got to work in this beautiful little ski town in the middle of Colorado. Has anybody been to Breckenridge? Gone skiing? Okay, so you've been through Frisco. I was very fortunate to be there. And then I was able to go to Grand County, which is up north. You might have been to Winter Park, Rocky Mountain National Park. That was it. And it was a great time of my life, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot in the schools. I got to do DARE. And so I was fortunate to be able to understand what our kids are going through. This was, of course, about 10 years ago, so sextortion wasn't really hitting our kids like it is now. So first of all, we talk about what is sextortion. So everybody knows what blackmail is. We've seen movies. Some people might have been blackmailed here, but you think of the mafia movie. You think of, well, you've got to do this, or this is going to happen. You've got to pay me this, or I'm going to tell everybody your secrets. Well, what we're seeing now is sexual extortion or sextortion. So it's essentially blackmail using sexual images that people have acquired, or in the last few years, they're creating. We've talked a little bit about AI during this conference, but a new trend that we're going to talk about today too is the creation of images that don't exist. And unfortunately, our kids and adults are dealing with it everywhere. It's happening. It's here. We get calls in the AG's office. My child is, somebody sent them this picture of him or her, and they're nude, and they didn't create this. And unfortunately, we're seeing it. So this is the Arkansas law for sexual extortion. I'm not going to make everybody read it. There's not going to be a test over it. But I just want everybody to really, we can give you the definition, but this is the legal definition. This is what we can use to arrest people. So, and one thing we're going to talk about, the damage the property, harm, or reputation of another person. That's the big part of this. That's why these people are doing it. They want something. They want to gain. And then we're going to go here. So sexual extortion in Arkansas, granted this is the Arkansas law, is a Class B felony. So luckily, if we are able to make these arrests, they normally stick pretty well. I know we've got some prosecutors in here. And so I don't know if you're seeing this all across your different districts, but it's here. And obviously this isn't a law class, but if you're a prosecutor or a law enforcement officer and you haven't seen it yet, it's coming. So the psychology behind it, and this is from the suspect side. Why are they doing this? Well, the main thing, and this comes back to a lot of crimes that deal with, in the world that I investigate is pedophilia. The main thing is power and control. So there's a lot of books that are written about why people perp or harm children. And the main thing comes back to power and control. Everybody thinks it's one of the big misnomers is that it's all about sex or gratification, but a lot of it is power and control. There's a book, if anybody's interested in this, there's a book called Conversations with a Pedophile. Half the book is written by a psychologist who works in a prison. The other half of the book is written by a man who's serving, I think he's in life, in prison, who was charged with crimes dealing with pedophilia. It's a hard book to read, but if anybody's interested in this topic and learning about it, I highly, highly suggest it. And what he talks about there, he talks about power and control. And that's what we see with these sextortion crimes. The next is greed. So a huge part of sextortion, mainly in the adult world, we see with domestic violence victims. Oftentimes in a relationship, especially now with cell phones and the internet, people are taking pictures that they think will never go out. Well, relationships don't often or don't always last forever. So we see it with greed. We see it with money. And the next thing is the societal part of it. So there's countries throughout this world that they grow up and they think and they see people using sextortion as a way to get money. You know, we've all gotten a call about our vehicle's warranty, right? Your vehicle warranty is about to expire, we need the money. They grow up thinking that that's a normal 9-to-5 job. They go into that business. They make a lot of money. And I think there was a speaker up here earlier that said a lot of these people, they run these like businesses. There's a customer service side. There's a human resources side. Well, there's businesses that run doing sexual extortion. And of course, fear and intimidation comes back to our domestic violence victims again. One of the easiest ways that a lot of these suspects can get kids to do things is by scaring them, intimidating them. And we'll talk about that later as to why our youth are sending these pictures and sending these videos. And I say youth, but adults too. At the AG's office, we've gotten calls about 70 and 80-year-olds who have been tricked into sending a picture of themselves, a nude picture. It happens. We see it. So it's not just your kids. It could be you, your parents, another family member. And last, which I kind of touched on, is culture and norms. So if you'll see down there, the most common of our suspects are coming from those 4 areas. So the Ivory Coast being the most likely. The Ivory Coast is filled with people who are not only going after your vehicle's warranty, but they're sexually extorting people. So this is an interesting stat. I'm going to talk about some research that was done. 90% of our juvenile sextortion victims are 13 to 17-year-old males. I know, when I first saw this stat, I was like, I don't know. I was worried about that, but it's true. And the other interesting part about that is our victims are mainly coming from household incomes of about $150,000. They're doing research to figure out who these kids are because they want them to pay. They want the money. And so they put time and effort and study, and they look into these victims to figure out who they can target. And they'll target specific areas of our country and where there's more wealthy people, wealthy families, private schools, and things like that. So when we look at the adults, it's about 50-50. And the majority of that, again, is coming from domestic violence. But the 50-50 split and the 90% statistic that you see, it blows my mind. It still baffles me. So when I was talking about this and I was creating this, I thought back about some of the calls that we've gotten at the AG's office. And the ones that I've gotten are young boys. So this is another interesting stat. These are the numbers. I don't know if everybody can see at the back. So the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, as I will refer to it, put out a report. They put out a report every year. But these are the reports. So NCMEC is just dealing with juvenile victims. These are the numbers that they are reporting for sexual extortion specific crimes. So look at 21, was at 139 reports. And then 22, it goes up. And then 23, we're still waiting on the 24 numbers. I'm terrified to see them. But one interesting thing about this is COVID. Everybody remembers COVID, right? What did we do during COVID? We went home. Our schools were canceled. The kids sat at home. Oftentimes, parents had to go to work. So what we saw at the AG's office is we get cyber tips from NCMEC that when Facebook or Google or Twitter or X, when somebody has shared child sexual abuse material on one of their platforms, they are able to see it by what's called a hash value of a file. And so if it's a known file that's shared, they make a report to NCMEC, and then it goes to wherever the state is that the suspect IP address is. And so during COVID, our cyber tips exploded. I mean, it was so difficult because we were just inundated with cyber tips. And what the suspects figured out is that these kids are often at home alone, and the schools have provided them with computers. So a lot of kids didn't have computers that were just theirs prior to COVID. Then COVID hit, they were alone, they had computers, and that's, in my opinion, that's when this really started to take over. And I talked about it on my panel earlier, but all these kids have Chromebooks, they all have laptops, they all have iPads, and they have figured out how to hack their school laptops and their school iPads. They've figured it out. I see it all the time. So the study, a lot of the statistics I'm about to mention were done by NCMEC and Thorn. If you don't know a lot about Thorn, it's a social media company that, well, it's just really, their whole goal is to help children and help NCMEC and try to further prevent CSAM or child sexual abuse material from being spread across the internet, to educate parents, to educate teachers, educate kids, educate everybody on what's going on with your kids on the internet. So Thorn and NCMEC did this study. And the study was really focused on sextortion for, prior to this year. We're still getting the 24 numbers coming in. So everybody thinks, well, my child wouldn't send that picture. They wouldn't send that video. Well, 82% of the time, the way that the suspect gets that picture is just reciprocation. They send the child, most likely a fake photo, saying, this is me, this is who I am, this is a real picture, I'm your boyfriend, I'm your girlfriend. And 82% of the time, that's how our suspects are getting the pictures of our children. And so next, our AI images were fake. Sometimes they're just good old-fashioned Photoshop. But I really suspect this number is about to rise. I think 11% is probably even lower. Granted, these are 23 stats, but I think that 11% is probably much higher right now, much higher. And so the big question is, what do we do about that? What do we do about AI and our kids? Well, we're working on that. We're trying to figure out, the whole world is trying to figure out what we do about AI and our kids. So next we see hacking. Hacking is of course much less common, but it's happening. Offers of money. Most kids aren't really worried about money. They especially kids that are in high school and junior high, they're more worried about a relationship with somebody. They're worried about that boyfriend or that girlfriend. And again, if you're targeting already a wealthy kid, they're not really worried about the money. They want that friend, they want that boyfriend, that girlfriend. And so I'll read some of these out because I know you might not be able to read it, but these are some of the most common things that NCMEC is seeing in their reports. And so the grammar is a little messed up. That's verbatim how it was written, so don't think, well, Walter doesn't know how to spell. So blocking me won't stop me from posting it viral. So immediately, that's what they're worried about. That's what these kids are worried about. I will send this to your school, and you know you will be expelled. So again, back to that statistic, you have a young, wealthier background child that's in a private school who's worried about their scholarship to college. Well, they don't want this going across the school. You've lost your dignity, you've lost your family, so you better send me more or I'm going to make it worse. I have your nudes and everything needed to ruin your life. Now think about being a 13, 14-year-old kid and reading these that somebody's sending them. This is probably somebody that you thought was your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I mean, it's terrifying. Even as adults, it's terrifying. And again, the universities. You won't go to college, you'll be exempt from universities if you don't cooperate with me. So some of these, and again, I know they're probably not big enough for some of the people in the back, but these are just the trends of sextortion over time. And what we'll see, we'll talk about here in just a minute. So we've got platform sextortion, your Googles, your Facebook, that's the light blue bar on the right. And then you've got public sextortion. So that's your normal texting or just normal interaction kind of interaction. And so these, again, have exploded. And if you'll look right at the bottom, it's starting in 2020. You see that graph just start to climb up. And again, that was right about the time that COVID was ending. I say ending. Kids were getting back in schools. They had their Chromebooks, and we were getting more targets. And these are by the week. So these are sextortion cases by the week that NCMEC is seeing. And the furthest that number is on the left is 1,000 that NCMEC is seeing. So the average over the course of this study, which was 2020 to 23, was 812 sextortion reports coming into NCMEC from the United States a week. A week. There's 50 states. And there's people just like me all across the country who are getting these reports at just astronomical numbers. And we're still getting them. State police, I don't know if Corwin is here. You'll hear from Corwin at some point. But state police gets these reports and they dish them out to the agencies responsible for investigating them. So next, these are the platforms that we're seeing the most sextortion taking place on. And so at the bottom, I have a little stat in there about moving from a public social media to a private, or a public platform to a private platform. When I talk about public, I mean Instagram, Facebook, it could be X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And so 65% of the time, the suspects, once they make that initial contact on Facebook or Instagram, they say, hey, let's move over to Snapchat, let's move over to Google, let's move over to WhatsApp and Telegram. Telegram is a big one. So a lot of our suspects know that if they move that over, there's either end-to-end encryption or the company doesn't process cyber tips. So a lot of companies, or I say a lot, some companies don't monitor what's going on in their network. They're not giving us cyber tips. So Telegram, the founder was arrested by the French government. It was end-to-end encrypted, and he wasn't helping governments crack down on CSAM and sextortion. So the French went and arrested him, which is fascinating. But Telegram is a big one. So Snapchat, another big one. Snapchat's getting a lot better about cooperating with law enforcement. Originally, everybody thinks, well, if I send you that Snapchat and you get it, it just goes away. It just disappears. Nothing disappears in our cyber world. It's always there. And Snapchat will respond to our search warrants and our subpoenas, and they give us those documents that we need. And luckily, we're able to put a lot of people in jail. But the Telegrams and some of the other ones across the globe, they won't respond to our search warrants. They won't respond to our subpoenas. And there's a company in New Zealand called Mega. And Mega is one of my favorites. It's a cloud. It's kind of like Dropbox. It's free. But Mega doesn't require anything. We served him a subpoena one time, and this guy in New Zealand called me back, and he said, "Oh, we don't need that. We'll just give you whatever you want." And whenever you sign up for Mega, the user agreement says that we'll give your stuff out and we don't care. And people click it. Nobody reads that. You update your iPhone, do you read the user agreements? No. But so Mega, I always love to give them a shout out because it was the coolest conversation with this guy in New Zealand. He's like, "No, we'll just go arrest him." He was all excited. He called me back. He was like, "Did you get him?" I'm like, "Yeah." So these are our adult victims. And so you look, the females are the green bar, males are the blue bar. If you look at that top one, former partner, 36% of the time that a woman was a victim of sextortion was from a former partner. And then we drop it down to intimate partner. And what they're talking about in the study was a current intimate partner. And there's two on here that I really want to highlight. The first one is family member. A family member. That stat for men is at 8.2. We're almost at 10% of men, adult men, being sextorted by a family member. The next one, which again, I think we're going to see this one go up here in the next few years, is caregiver. So as we age, the caregivers are younger, and our caregivers now are much more up to speed on cyber and internet and taking advantage of people. They know how to work technology. And so I see this trend moving up. But the family member and the caregiver are two of the most alarming to me. We also have the stranger category, which is very low. It's very low. It's 10% for men and 5.5% for women. And again, these are adult victims. So this was an interesting one too. This goes by country, and it shows the left side of your screen is going to show the suspects. So Thorne and NCMEC actually reached out to suspects and asked them, who are you going after? Who are you talking to? Who are you extorting? And so if you look at the South Korea category, it's the third from the bottom. Women far and above did more sexual extortion than men in South Korea. Well, why is that? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But it's in one of the big countries that we're actually seeing sextortion on Americans is South Korea. It's a very common. We talk about the Ivory Coast and we talk about other countries in Africa, but South Korea is one of our big ones. So this story I'm about to tell you is, unfortunately, I told you this isn't one of the easiest presentations, but this is one that I sat in a conference in Atlanta about 6 years ago, and I met the New Zealand again, detective that worked this case. And it's one that, I asked him afterwards if I could share it, and we want parents to see really what's going on the internet. So this is Gordon Chalmers. He was a 42-year-old law professor in New Zealand. He had kids, he was married, had a good job. And what he did for 10 years before he was arrested and put behind bars was he got online and he pretended to be Justin Bieber. And during that time, he chatted with kids, boys and girls, as far as they know, as young as 5 years old, all the way up to even adults. And he got them to believe that he was Justin Bieber. He would video chat with him, but he would kind of leave it to where it's a little shaded and you really couldn't see his face. He learned to talk like Justin Bieber, to text like Justin Bieber. He memorized all of his songs, and he would use lyrics in the songs to make these kids think that Justin Bieber was their boyfriend or their girlfriend. And during that time, he had 123 different conversations with kids. And this is what they were able to prove, granted, after he was arrested. 6,000 different kids that Mr. Chalmers talked to, all online. And once he was arrested and put behind bars and the court proceedings were over, they were able to identify 157 victims. So the 157 is what he was actually charged with. There's still kids out there that they were never able to contact because he did this in countries all over the world while he was in New Zealand. He got home from work, and this is what he did. I get home from work and I mow the grass or I cook. I know everybody has hobbies and what they do when they get home from work. This is what he did every day for 10 years. And so during that time, what did he do? He gained their trust. He got that power over them. And he knew that these kids, again, they're not interested in money. They're interested in a relationship. They're interested in having somebody that understands them and that they can talk to. And in this case, it was Justin Bieber. I mean, think back to your celebrity crush when you were 15. If they had reached out to you and started texting you, saying that it was them, and they were using these photoshopped images to prove it, it happened. And so during that time, he convinced these kids maybe to send a picture with a bathing suit on, or maybe just underwear. And then he would keep that conversation going. Sometimes he'd do it in a week, sometimes he'd do it in a month, sometimes he would carry it further down the road based on the victim. And then nude images and nude videos started coming up. And once he had those, he had them hooked. He could get them to do whatever he wanted. He had the power and control over these kids. And one of the worst parts about Mr. Chalmers is that he started getting the kids to act out violence. And he would make them video it or live stream it. And there was numerous amount of his victims that would either commit acts of violence on a sibling, a family pet, and he videoed it and he kept it. And when he was arrested, they found it. There was one girl in particular who he convinced to kill the family dog and the family cat while he videoed it. She did it. All because he had those nude images and the nude videos. So we talk about how, I'm sure there's a lot of you that think, how do they do this? How do they get this trust? How do they convince these kids that this is normal? This is real. Well, this is the grooming circle. Everybody in law enforcement learns about it. And I know there's social workers and teachers, and a lot of people learn about this grooming circle. But this is what it looks like. It starts with a target. They identify the target. Maybe they're going to go after that 14-year-old boy who lives in one of the richer neighborhoods in LA or wherever. They make that contact. They get something in common. They gain the trust. So once they gain the trust, they figure out, maybe you do need money, or maybe you need a friend, maybe you need a boyfriend, maybe you need a girlfriend. And then once that's there, they fill that need. If it's money you want, I'll give you money. I'm not asking for anything in return. I'm your friend. And from there, they isolate them. And this happens in our sextortion cases as well as real life. This wheel was developed from victims of real life sexual abuse and abuse. And then the abuse starts. They demand the gifts. They demand the videos. They start assaulting. That's when it really starts. And then they have the control. Again, it all comes back to power and control. So we talk about our kids, right? And we talk about, I brought up the explanation of COVID, and all these kids have phones. I mean, there's kids that are 6, 7, 8 that have the newest iPhone. They have an iPhone that I don't even have. And they have apps on them. And they know how to use those apps. They know how to use those apps a lot of times better than you do, better than I do. And unfortunately, one of the big things that they have on these phones that's in their pocket everywhere they go is a big beacon that's pointing exactly where they are. I have one in my pocket, and it's probably telling my wife that I'm out for a jog right now because I'm pacing across the stage. And it's watching everything you do, where you're going, and how fast you're driving. Does people use Life 360? Do you have it set to where your kids, if they're driving, they can't go over 60 miles an hour? Well, they all have these GPS beacons everywhere they go, which can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse. And Snapchat is one of the things that it can be a curse. And hopefully there's no Snapchat reps in here, but I do have to say Snapchat is a wonderful app, and it can be used for a lot of fun. I do these presentations in high schools, and I tell the kids, I'm not telling you not to use social media. Use it. Have fun with it. I take Snapchats and send them to my mom and my friends all the time. My dog does something funny, send it to my mom, and she thinks, oh, cool, Snapchat from Walt. She loves it. There's a time and a place for this stuff, but it needs to be controlled, and parents have to be the one to control it. So a part of Snapchat is Snap Map. And I talk to the kids about this in the high schools, and I say, who has Snap Map? And they almost all raise their hands. And then I tell them this funny little story. Whenever I was a detective out in Colorado, we had this kid who ran away from home. We couldn't find him. And so I had a fake Snapchat, and I sent him a friend request, and he accepted it like 15 seconds. And I got on Snap Map, and there he was, right down the street. And he had posted on his Snapchat story a picture of him and he's 16, picture of him and his buddies drinking beer about 4 blocks from his house. He'd been gone for 12 hours. So I tell all the kids in school that, because what do? They accept every friend request they get. Every one of them. They want more friends. It used to be you have to really work to have friends and make friends and go talk to people, but now you just click friend, done. So a part of Snap Map is it's an optional feature that's on Snapchat, and most people use it, or most of the kids use it. But what we've seen recently with everything going on in Ukraine and Gaza, part of the Snapchat or Snap Map feature is you can upload things directly to Snap Map, and then a little heat signal will come up on the map, and you can click on that area and view what's going on. So when I was making this PowerPoint about a year ago, this part of it, I went over and scrolled into Ukraine. And there on Snap Map, I could see some of the worst images and videos of war that were on there. And I did it on my desktop, on my computer in my office, without ever logging into Snapchat. I just went to snapmap.com, and it's there. So this is a video that I took. Again, it's on my desktop. And so these are those little heat beacons that you can see. And this was a random video that I took about around Halloween last year in New Orleans, just to demonstrate kind of how weird Snap Map is. So I'm going to click on one of these. See, I'm right there in New Orleans. I'm going to click on one, and it's going to go to wherever that person was. And this is a random guy or girl videoing cheerleaders at a high school pep rally. That's all it is. And of course, I'm not putting all the really bad things that I found on Snapchat up here, but that's just a brief description of how easy it is to just find random things on Snap Map, and it's on your kids' phones. So it's so good. It knows where you are down to a block. It knows if you're in your car, if you're in your house. It knows when you and your friends are together, where y'all are at. It knows if you're dancing at a music festival. And one of the weirdest ones, it knows when you're sleeping. And it puts it out there for everybody to see. Oh, Walter's at home, he's sleeping. Time to break into his house. So I always put this slide up, and I'll leave it up for a little bit. This is how you turn this feature off on your kids' phones. There we go. I got some cameras coming up. So there's a couple slides, so I'm going to go through it. The first one is this ghost mode. The ghost mode is not going to share your last active location. Doesn't mean it's off, but you've got to turn it off as a part of this. So you go to your settings, and you'll see ghost mode. And make sure it's enabled. Make some phones go down. All right. Then you're going to move on. You go down to hide my live location. Because if ghost mode's on, live, or if it's turned off, or on, I guess, then live location's still on. They can still see where you're going. So you've got to turn both those features off. And beware, Snapchat could have updated last night. It could have changed, but this is the most recent one at the time of this. But the settings are still in there, but you've got to go to it and do it yourself. So this is what it'll look like if you have successfully done it. It's going to say not sharing location and ghost mode is enabled. And that's my little emoji with, I got like a Hawaiian shirt and shorts and flip-flops, and I'm sitting in my office. So that's what you want to see on your Snapchat or your kids' Snapchat. So the next thing I want to talk about is Discord. So Discord is an app that most kids are using for gaming and for chatting and for things like that. But I want to talk about a case that happened in Oklahoma. It's not far from here. It's really close. And the reason I'm talking about this case in Oklahoma is because it can happen anywhere. So this man, Mr. Cadenhead, who's currently in prison, created a server on Discord. And the server, when he was 16, was to sexually extort people. His accounts were shut down, but he kept building new ones, all on Discord. So when I talk about servers, I'm talking about this little bar over here on the left that's different, pretty much chat rooms you can get in. And then you can chat about different things. Maybe you want to talk about the movies, you want to talk about the biology test you got coming up. And of course your chat room. Your kids are using Discord or in these different servers. And so the server was 746, which is the last part of his zip code where Cadenhead was from. So it started with the art teacher giving him an assignment to make some art, get on Discord and share it. The art teacher in the school. Wasn't malicious. She wanted her kids to talk about what they were doing. The victim in this case she liked horror movies. She wanted to get on and she looked at a horror movie server and learned about different things, and somebody started chatting to her in the server. So once they started chatting with her, they said, hey, let's move to a private server. It's still in Discord, but they moved to a private chat room. And the relationship was built, and the power and control was there once they started talking and exchanging images. So multiple of these server admins were taken down, they were arrested, and they did some of the most atrocious things to kids all across Oklahoma, all across the world. But it happened in Oklahoma. It happened for 2 weeks before the mom caught on to it when she was about to commit suicide in her bathtub because one of the members had told her to do it. They told her that since they had her nude image, she had to commit suicide or they were going to share it with her school. So she started live streaming and her mother caught it. And so then one of the kids on the server called the school. They're not, I mean, these people are real. They called the school and tried, repeatedly. The school's phone system almost went down. So many of them were calling to try to spread the word about this girl and spread her nude images. And so they were all arrested. And there's 2 were arrested in the U.S., 1 was in Romania, and a 4th one in Mexico. So it's happening everywhere. But it happened in Oklahoma, it can happen here, it can happen in Waldron, it can happen anywhere. The internet is everywhere. So these are some of the apps I always like to put up for parents. You've got Discord, Instagram, Kik. These are the icons. Of course, Snapchat, Omegle. Kids shouldn't be online talking to strangers on the internet. There's There's no place for it. You've got Whisper, Plenty of Fish, Kick. We see a lot of cyber tips come from Kick, a lot. One of our agents who just walked out arrested somebody based off a Kick cyber tip just last week. So we see it. So this is the NECMEC version of, it's takeitdown.org. And so NECMEC has created this, so if there's CSAM images or child exploitation material that is on the internet and the victim knows about it, kids can get on this site and parents and work on taking these down. There are some out there for adults, but oftentimes you have to upload the images to them, and I don't like to talk about those just because I don't want to endorse those, but NECMEC I'll endorse all day for the rest of my life. It's a wonderful organization. And last, just to bring us back home, is Lucy. Lucy is our dog. Hopefully everybody got to meet Lucy. Lucy is one of our biggest tools in arresting people and fighting child exploitation around the state. She's a wonderful tool. She finds electronic devices that are hidden. Everybody remember Jared, the subway guy? One of these dogs is what took him down. So there she is. That was an operation in Fayetteville. And this is Lucy every morning at the AG's office. So that is me. This is my email address. If anybody wants to reach out to me, please do so. And thank you all.